Yeah, we have a few minutes, so I'm gonna mute myself and get a drink of water. I'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Jasper.
Say hi. You can say hi.
Hello.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Penny. Good.
How are you?
Good. Mike. Jesus.
Hey.
Well, it's my first meeting as chair, so I hope you guys will all be gentle on me tonight.
I told everyone to be extra mean.
I don't know. We'll see. Are you hosting this, Sheila?
I'm here so I can start the recording.
Oh.
So we get support from the clerk's office at the regular meetings, and normally the chair will record it for the subcommittee meetings.
Gotcha.
But John didn't have the login information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'll take this opportunity to thank Dawn Moran for providing me with the technology to show my face. And also, you should know that Dawn is recording this meeting for her and her friends.
Okay, so when we start, John's gonna ask about that, and she'll have to declare it.
Oh, I thought
on
you
the
were already
record.
started.
That's fine. He'll just have to declare it on the record because of legal issues.
It looks like everybody's here, so once we hit 6 o'clock, we should be good.
Got yourself a big brewski there, Penny?
What?
I said you got yourself a big brewski there?
Yeah, whatever it takes. No, tea. Yeah, I don't drink beer.
I was just teasing.
Yep. When it's clear, be worried.
Sheila, do you have 6? I have 6 o'clock here. I don't know if I should wait.
I have 5:58.
Okay, I'll wait.
So 2-minute lapse always feels like it always feels super awkward, but we have to wait in case someone from the public is planning on joining. If they join right at 6 and miss 2 minutes of discussion, and it ends up being something that was important to them. So there's a reason at least. But yeah, it feels cumbersome, doesn't it?
Them's the rules.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording now. That way, when 6 o'clock comes, we're just all set.
Okay.
Oh gosh, it's been okay. Never mind. It's been recording the whole time.
Okay.
Good thing we weren't exchanging embarrassing stories about our Mondays.
Here's a reminder. Take medicine. Here's a reminder. Take medicine.
All right, are we ready to go?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Community Relations and Education Committee, our February 28th meeting, 2022 at 6 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Community Relations and Education Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time.
Be on camera.
Dawn Moran is recording.
Thank you. And I will do the roll call next. Councillor Toronzo,
Present.
Councillor Ricketts,
Here?
Councillor Lapiensky,
A simulation of Councilor Lapiensky is present.
President Gilmore,
Here.
and I am Councillor Bottomley. Everyone is present. We have a quorum. Public comment. If you could put your name and address in the chat, I will recognize you. Looks like we have a small enough group. I might be able to recognize people in the discussion possibly also. So if it does come up at some point, it looks like we have some people with knowledge, and Director Hoffman, I believe, was on too. You can always put your name in the chat. Welcome. Communications from the school. Oh, let me check to make sure there's. Oh, Dawn Moran, would you like to do public comment?
Yeah, I would. I'm not going to go on camera. I'm going to just read what I have.
Okay.
Okay, so I sent out some emails to the school committee about rescinding the mask policy in schools, but I only received one response from one committee member. And in her reply, and I want to quote, when the mask mandate was imposed by a school committee, the Greenfield Health Department was consulted along with all unions and other personnel working for the school system. Now we will need to reverse that system and consult with all stakeholders before making a decision. We will also need to listen to all parents who have an opinion about masks, as well as any children who might have an opinion. So I'm not sure what she meant by all stakeholders, but I made it a point to watch the recent Board of Health meeting to see what the recommendation would be in regards to masks in school. And I was very disappointed that the board took no action to make a recommendation to present to the school committee. Therefore, I reached out to the Board of Health to find out why. And in that reply, and I quote, "The school committee has a say regarding schools. The Board of Health and the mayor are for the city." So this was concerning to me because I understand that DESE and our governor left it up to each city or town. However, this decision is a health issue and it should be up to our local Board of Health, not the school committee, the unions, personnel working for the school system, or parents and students who have no qualifications to justify making health decisions for the entire student body. This is a health decision that should be made by the Board of Health and strictly based on data, not opinions. I'm not sure what, if anything, this committee can do, but I felt the need to bring this up tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dawn.
Point of order.
Yes,
I do not want to discuss that issue at all. It belongs at school committee meeting, or if somebody from the schools is here. But council needs to stay in their lane. Thank you.
thank you, Councilor Ricketts.
Wait, I have
And-
another point of order. Are counselors allowed to respond to public comments? No, right?
No,
So then why are you responding?
no, I spoke to the chair, not to the person speaking.
Noted.
Thank you.
Thanks, and I just wanted to acknowledge in the chat, Director Hoffman is also here. I didn't know if you wanted to speak or we're just acknowledging you're here, but I'm really glad you're here, and I'm sure we'll have questions if you want to take them later or just observe. It's completely up to you. Communications from the school department, we have none tonight. Communications from department heads, we have none. First item under discussion tonight is housing in Greenfield, and I just wanted to bring up, I had talked to several people on this, and this is going to be postponed to April or May. There's a lot of exciting things in the works, and I think they'll have more information to share with us at that point. So we'll talk in shares about whether that'll be in April or May. It depends on the budget discussions. So we'll move directly on to the enforcement of city housing codes. And I would like to welcome our invited guest, Jesus Leiva. Mr. Leiva has spent a great deal of time and effort compiling the documents before us tonight. Because of his extensive knowledge of these public records, I'm going to give him the floor and allow us to have an open discussion with him about these documents. So, Mr. Leiva, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if I was still muted or not. I sent an email sort of laying out a statement to the committee members, but I'm going to sort of partly read from a statement and also try to go off that statement. Just I wrote it ahead of time just so that I didn't get off track. I brought before the committee a summary of 20 years of documented history of sustained housing violations for a single property owner over his negligent management of half a dozen rental properties. And I understand that there's some reluctance about naming names, but I feel in this particular case it's important to do. The property owner is Theodore Burrell.
Point of order.
Yes?
I just
Dr.
want to
Rick-
know if Mr. Burrell was invited to this meeting, because if we're going to focus on only one property owner, any work that the council does is only targeted towards one person. So we're setting a very scary precedent. So I just want to know if he was invited so that this is fair.
Mr. Burrell was not invited, and I believe his public record is extensive and speaks for itself. And that documentation, as you can see, is
Yep.
hundreds of pages. So that's where we are right now. if it gets to, if we decide to take action on something and it involves an executive session at some further point, I'm sure he'll be invited. But right now, I think we're just talking about these public documents, which are open to the entire public. So I don't think there's a problem here from my perspective.
I did actually ask a similar question to John Bottomley about this as well. And I think that, yeah, there's a lot of public records around this, and these records date back to at least early 2003, and a lot of the issues are still persistent. I mean, I've been in contact with some departments who have dealt with him more recently and have insisted that he's currently in compliance. Sorry, what?
Oh, I just, sorry, let me interrupt for a second. I just wanted to ask everyone online to mute if possible, to help with the background noise.
Is it working? I'm not sure. I just got clicked off or something. Shoot.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So I am asking a very direct thing of city councilors, which is to start a dialogue with the state attorney general's office concerning the management of these.
But I can't see anybody.
Sorry, I keep on hearing some noise. Hello?
All right.
Oops.
So right now, everybody should be on mute except for the chair and the speaker.
Hello? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I am asking for a very specific request from City Council, which is for the City Council to start a dialogue with the Attorney General's office concerning the management of these properties, and yes, concerning this one property owner. The reason why I'm doing this is because of the management of these properties has necessitated the repeated and sometimes sustained involvement of 5 different city departments and city leadership for over 100 health department complaints, over 3 dozen fire department citations, at least 20 police incidents, 16 tax-taking events, and a history of non-compliance with the building department. As a result, no fewer than 12 municipal lawsuits by Greenfield's health department have been registered in the housing court and 3 with the state's land court. I understand there's an enormous amount of documentation related to this, so if you don't have time to read the hundreds of pages, I would direct your attention to the 12-page summary that I provided to the City Council in November of last year. I think a lot of what I've heard in terms of my attempts to address this with city councilors and with different department heads is if there's a specific violation that I'm trying to get addressed. And that's not really the question or concern that I am trying to address. It's rather future potential violations and the obviousness that this is not related to any one specific violation or incident. That the fact that there are so many records and that these incidents are repeated seems to indicate that in order to actually effectively manage this, we would need to be monitoring these properties. And that's just not something that's possible for the city. I mean, you know, the health department, the fire department, they can't create individual protocols for dealing with specific landlords. That's just not reasonable. That is why this issue is before City Council and why I have made similar requests to the mayor's office, which I haven't really heard a response for. I wouldn't be asking city councilors to do this if, well, I wouldn't be asking city councilors to do this if these issues were taken under advisement during the tax title proceedings. The city did, in fact, during the tax title proceedings, have the ability to do some of the things that I'm asking now of the city council through a complaint with the Attorney General's office, or at least some kind of a dialogue. What I'm asking for really is for the members of this committee to, I guess, support the city council president reaching out to the Attorney General's office to have this dialogue, to review this information so that it's brought to their attention, as I believe that it's something that's well within the purview of the Attorney General's office. I've looked at the recent case history and the recent case summaries for the Attorney General's office in Western Mass Housing Court, and I have looked at the case summaries for defendants against the Attorney General's office in Housing Court. And together, all of those summaries combined for the last 3 years are barely a fifth of this one landlord's housing records and court case history in the courts. I mean, this one person has been taken to court as a defendant 22 times. 15 of those are municipal lawsuits. 12 of those are us, and there is even one from the fire department in Turner's Falls, and there's one from the health department in Montague. I mean, I don't know what else I can say in terms of why I think this needs to be brought to the attention of the Attorney General's office. I mean, I think it would have been appropriate in 2011 when there were physical altercations that had been reported of concern involving the landlord in question. I think it would have been appropriate in 2015 when there was local TV news reporting on 75 separate violations of the health code at a single property. I mean, it would have been appropriate in 2017 when the city filed 4 separate lawsuits against this landlord. Would have been appropriate in 2020 when 5 different departments were simultaneously fielding complaints relating to 2 properties. I mean, these complaints included a property dispute, trash burning, a serious gas leak, multiple housing code violations, and an outstanding balance of $80,000 with the city for unpaid property taxes. And while that is now paid, that was only after the city essentially threatened to take away this person's properties, through a legal process. And this isn't the first time that has had to happen in order for the city to be able to. And it's not like this person is experiencing hardship. This is a person collecting, rent on investment properties. I understand to some degree why, the city has a lenient policy, in tax title proceedings, and it makes sense, and I support it. But when it comes to a person who has repeatedly shown that they do not care about the safety of tenants and neighbors, it's no longer appropriate for the city to just treat each violation as a separate instance with no memory of the previous ones. I mean, as Councillor Ricketts might have known, because it was Councillor Ricketts who had recommended that I attend the Safety Commission meeting a couple of years ago to bring this issue up to the fire chief, there are 9 different separate instances of unauthorized burning that go as far back as 2015, with the most recent one that I'm aware of being 2020, which was the one that I had to report near my property. These are literal garbage fires we're talking about. And as a result of going to that meeting, as Councillor Ricketts has suggested, I got to talk to the fire chief. And while the fire chief was aware of Burrell's violation history, the fire chief was not aware that this had been the 9th instance of unauthorized burning, because, as he had said, the incidents were split up between different fire responders and between different properties. And so it was flagged for future burning. But I think that it's that one discussion, and that sort of underscores the reality of of why I'm bringing this forward in this way and why I'm providing all of the documentation, why I'm insisting that city councilors and local officials actually look at the documentation. I think it should be fairly obvious why I'm asking for something further than simply addressing a specific violation, or why I'm asking, to go as far as to contact the Attorney General's office. But I guess I'd like to, I think I've said what I need to say. If people have questions about this,
I do.
Excellent. I'd like to open this up to counselors for questions. Let me quick see the chat. Yes, Counselor Ricketts.
Yes, thank you, Jesus. I would just like to ask a couple questions. My first one is there anyone besides you for owners that are abutting his property or tenants that have formally made complaints?
Are you, I mean, not to the city council, but
No,
certainly,
to anyone in the city.
well, of
People
course,
don't
I mean,
usually bring it to us because they know that it's not our purview. We have committees and commissions and public safety. So, but to your knowledge, I'm asking if there's any other tenants or property owners that have any of these issues as well with Mr. Burrell.
yes, I mean, well, all of these documents show individual complaints that were made by different tenants and property owners to the health department, the fire department, the police department. I mean, they're not, I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
Right. I'm just clarifying that you wanting us to go to the Attorney General's office is because there's X amount of property owners and tenants who are asking for this. It's not one abutting property owner, it's many tenants.
If you're asking about the specific request before the city council or this committee to go to the Attorney General's office based on this documented violation history, no, I am the singular person making this request. But I would like to also further say that I think if any of the many tenants who have filed complaints against this property owner knew that that was an option for them, it is an option they probably would have taken. In fact, any tenant can make a complaint to the Attorney General's office based on a landlord. Most don't because they don't know that, and most of these things are resolved locally through the health department, or in actually the majority of instances, tenants simply choose to live as they will without, without filing a complaint formally, or they'll simply move. I've actually talked to several tenants who simply just moved as a result of the issues. And that's actually in some ways, the easiest thing for tenants to do, because a lot of times when, tenants are dealing with a really bad landlord, sustaining a complaint against that landlord is challenging for them.
Right, exactly.
Some of them, they're poor, so they won't easily find new housing, or they may have some previous altercation, it's some other instance where they can't, or they just don't have trust in government because they don't feel that government is going to be able to resolve it, or they just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people who just simply don't know what to do when they have an issue.
Right. Okay. So that was just my follow-up. That's my fear, because I know that you had sent some information on a community who did go to the Attorney General's office. So I'm just saying is, for me to even step in and want to be part of this, I would have to see a good number of complaints coming. So it's not just you putting it forward. It is other people, because I don't think attorney generals will move on it. Even if the council's doing this, we're setting a huge precedent doing this based on one person coming forward to us.
Right, except I am one person coming to you with a specific resolution to the problems. I'm not one person coming to you with complaints. There are hundreds of complaints documented with the city over a 20-year history. In fact, the abutters on all sides of the property that I own have filed complaints with either the health department, the police department, or the fire department against this one landlord.
Counselor Lapinski, you had your hand up.
So I don't see why what Jesus is proposing is controversial. Jesus is coming to the council because the executive branch of the city of Greenfield has ignored him and stonewalled him for years.
Look, I also want to say that this isn't about how any individual department has handled the complaints. I understand that they have challenges to deal with, and in a lot of sense, they can only respond to complaints as they come in. And in terms of resolution, if a tenant doesn't sustain a complaint with a particular department, it makes sense for the department to move on to any number of other things that they're responsible for in complaints. And I mean, I think that there are there's room for improvement in how they review documentation, concerning particular challenging landlords. But I mean, I don't really fault them for not. I don't fault the fire chief for not knowing about all of the other unauthorized burning incidents. I mean, that's just it's understandable given how many other things that that they're responsible for handling.
All right, thank you. I just have one point of order for people who post in the chat. You're not allowed to do that, and you make that in a legal meeting. I'm not saying it because you spoke about me. I'm fine. You just cannot post in the chat.
Thank you, Counselor Ricketts.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions from counselors? Yes, Counselor Trenzo.
I guess it's not as much of a question as it is kind of a follow-up statement to what I think we're being asked here. Is after reviewing, I haven't even gotten through all of the documents, but I've read a significant portion of them. And with it not even necessarily, I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Jesus, but if we may not be able to do anything about what has happened per se,
Right.
but going forward, and this shouldn't just apply to this one landlord, this should be in general. We have rules that are made in all of these departments for a reason and to be enforced. And I'm not just calling out the fire department on this one at all by any means, but one thing that I did notice were three dates that were all within 32 days of each other. There were 3 burning reports, and in the reports back from the fire department, 2 of them were at the same location. One of them looks like, maybe I shouldn't burn there anymore. I'm going to go to one of my other properties. All 3 of them, they were advised that they could be fined, and the next week did it again. This to me is a problem with enforcement, and not, like I said, not just calling out the fire department. It just happened to be these 3 in a short period of time. I understand there's a protocol or a process that usually gets used to not immediately find somebody who doesn't know. It's kind of like giving a warning for a speeding ticket the first time. But when you see that somebody's been pulled over week after week after week, police are probably going to give them a ticket when they see the history of how many times they've been pulled over for speeding. So as a whole, it just seems like this was a grooming pattern, so to speak, for a landlord to be like, well, I'm not really going to get in trouble for it anyway. So why do I care if somebody calls, other than having to deal with it that particular time or that evening? But Yeah, and I guess that's just what I'm trying to say, that I think that this should be almost a learning experience going forward, and that this is just a compiling of documents on this one landlord. But I mean, you could probably do this for a number of landlords around that aren't taking care of properties. And so I think, at least from what I'm hearing, what should be more importantly than just this one gentleman, is, though it is hard with, we don't have staff to really be harping on every single one of these things, but having a little bit more of a proactive approach to how our landlords in our city are working. And yeah, so that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess sorry, is it okay if I respond?
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, I think it, when you look at specifically the burning incidences of that on those particular properties, it's very clear that the city made a point to tell him exactly what he was doing wrong and to make it clear to him that that wasn't something that he should have been doing. And that unless they're actively paying attention, this is a person who is cognizant of the fact that he's doing something wrong and is just simply going to do it again. And just, if he gets caught, he gets caught. There's no consequences. So he's not particularly concerned. He sometimes becomes concerned when he's actively being monitored, like when he's actively being monitored by the health department. But and they have done as good a job as they can. Given that the health department has often seen a lot of turnover in staffing, but and like I think one thing that should be said is that I think there's definitely a need in the city for a rental inspection ordinance, some kind of reviewing or changing of how the code is enforced in the city. But when we're talking about this one landlord, we're talking about someone very different than the rest of the city. I mean, I've reviewed all of the case summaries for the health department of landlords they've taken to housing court, and he's the only one who has more than 2 cases. He's had 12 different cases that went before the housing court due to a health department complaint. I mean, that's a very different category than the, maybe a dozen other landlords that the city has, singled out as potentially being challenging landlords. And like, I'm a renter and at this point also a landlord, sort of as a result of these issues. And I have relatively, good landlords. If I have an issue, I can talk to them. They're understanding of those things, and it's, it doesn't any issue that has that has arisen when at my rental situation is something that's actually communicated and taken care of, and it's clear that my landlords actually care about what might happen at the place that I live. But that's, you can look at the documentation around Burrell and his properties, and it's very clear. I mean, we have unauthorized entry into apartments several times, actually. That's in the police report. There's one very, long document of all the police altercations. We have, like unnumbered amount of trash complaints. I mean, this is something as simple as where the city should have just sent him, a letter a long time ago to this landlord and said, you have to have a system for dealing with the trash at your property. You have to tell your tenants what that system is. You can't just burn furniture on the lawn of your property. I mean, who does that? Who does that? I mean, what is that?
Right. And,
Counselor Ricketts?
yeah, so, hey, Sue, so I'm wondering, in your research for the district attorneys, will they basically take all the documentation that you have now, and all the council needs to do is put a front page on it? Like nothing else really needs to be done? That is all what they were basically would be needing, do you know? And it just has to be sent in our name, or do you know?
I don't know, and that's actually I have actually tried to do this myself. I have contacted the Attorney General's office and asked them to review this information, and
Mhm.
they've essentially declined to do that. The reason why I'm going to the city council and or the mayor's office is because there's political weight that comes behind those requests.
Oh, wait, okay. Just one more. Why did they decline? Just because it may just happen to us too. Like, what's the reason for the decline?
Well, I made 3 separate complaints, and they were very different complaints. One was for them to review this landlord's rental business as a business. That is the complaint that that's the one complaint where I'm actually asking the city councilor to basically support it.
Okay.
The second one was around his violation history, and they simply said that they wouldn't review the complaint because I was not a tenant filing a complaint. So, again, if any tenant of his were to file a complaint based on these repeated incidents, they would presumably be heard by the Attorney General's office. The last one was specific to my property and specific to a legal issue that arose out of a legal issue that arose around my property based on my my moving out of the property.
Oh, right. Yes. So then I guess it brings me back to the very beginning is we basically, before we could go forward, would need to make sure that different tenants, along with yourself, will formally send a complaint to us. Correct?
I don't think that's true, but I think it would be helpful, certainly. I think it would be helpful to have tenants of his speaking out against him. But I think that's not really what I'm not really asking the city council to engage with tenants to move the complaint forward. I think many tenants have expressed fear in doing just that. Those, the fear that tenants have expressed in moving forward with complaints against him are very clearly documented in the police reports. I mean, over that 20 years, many tenants have actually asked for police assistance simply when he was doing a repair on the property because they were afraid. In the news article that I sent a link to concerning the 2015 violation at 9 Coleraine Street, tenants were expressing fear in dealing with their landlord. I don't think it's really appropriate to have to ask tenants to be the driving force behind a complaint to the Attorney General's office. I think this becomes the purview of either the health department, the Board of Health, the mayor's office, or the city council. And I think in asking for this, I kind of understand what you're saying, Councillor Ricketts. I do understand that you are concerned that you're trying to bring to the attention something to the Attorney General's office which they may decide not to review or they don't think is within their scope. And the only thing that I can say to assure you about this is that I have actually reviewed the case summaries for 20 different cases that the Attorney General's office has brought before defendants in Western Mass. And the combined history of those 20, in those 20, defendant cases, only one of them had a comparable court history to Burrell's. The other 19 together were barely half of Burrell's housing court case history. It was like 40 or 45 cases next to Burrell's 70 or 74. Like the Attorney General's office regularly deals with defendants who are far more benign than Burrell. That is what I am trying to bring both to the attention of the city council and the Attorney General's office. it's not clear that the criteria that they actually use to determine whether they hear a case or not is based on that kind of objective data. I think that in a lot of ways it ends up being subjective. I have seen in, some of those case summaries, the city of Holyoke is listed as a plaintiff. I've seen the Board of Health of communities listed as plaintiffs. I've seen the health departments of communities listed as plaintiffs alongside the Attorney General's office. So how the Attorney General's office decides on taking these cases and how they become aware of them is not something that's very clear. And I think that is where it's a question of political pressure, where it has to be coming from the city council or the city council president, or preferably the mayor, where they're coming to the Attorney General's office with the documentation and with the weight of their elected office behind them, saying that this is something that needs to be paid attention to.
Counselor Lapiensky, did you have a question?
So yeah, first I'd like to respond to something that Councilor Torenzo said with regard to if the police pull you over X number of times, you'll eventually get a ticket. Well, we know that there are certain kinds of people that may be able to not get a ticket, like war veterans, for example, or other people who the police will have sympathy for, or off-duty police officers. And I think that this is an example of someone who the city could have gone after and various parties had interests. Once again, I see no issue with us doing what Jesus is requesting. We could do it, we could not do it. If we do it, and the Attorney General's office declines, then we're out a few minutes of our time and we did the best for our citizens, and that's that. There's no downside to it. So I don't know if I'm allowed to make a motion now, but I'd love to.
I believe you can make a motion.
So then I move a recommendation to the full council that we forward Jesus's complaint to the Attorney General's office as the city council.
Now, the question I have is, do we want this to go to the full council, or do you think that's the best way to go, or should this just be something that comes from the council president to take to the Attorney General's office? That's a question I have.
I had that same question.
Do we have any
So I
thoughts?
can,
Yep.
I think that I can make a phone call just as well as any other citizen, but I think that if I'm going to make a phone call as the city council president, I'm not going to do that without the city council approving that I do that, just because it would be like, I feel like I'd be hijacking the group. I feel like when someone says, I'm the city council president and I am saying on behalf of the city council, I think that means that there's the weight of many people behind you. So I think that it would have to go to the council before I was going to do that.
Yes, Counselor Torenzo.
Yeah, and just in response to Councilor Lapiensky's statement, that's kind of exactly what I was.
No, there's a motion on the floor. It's not time to respond to that.
No, I was agreeing with you.
So then say second. That's what you do, Mike.
I wasn't missing the.
If you're in agreement, then you second my motion and then we proceed with the vote.
Okay, I'll second the motion so that we can discuss
Discuss.
it.
What is the motion as it was originally intended to go to the full council, or because John had asked that question?
I believe what I said was that I move a recommendation to the full council that the city council as a body forward Jesus's request to the Attorney General's office. I didn't write it down in advance, so I used extra words, but we'll figure it out.
So it's been made and seconded.
Yes, so we can open this up to discussion.
Okay, I was unclear on whether or not it was a proposed amendment to the motion that that we is the motion to have the full council be voting to push it through, or for the full council to ask the president to contact the attorney general. That was my clarification on the motion, is what I was trying to ask. So if it's as it was originally stated, then I would move to amend the motion to state that it go to the full council to vote for the president to contact the attorney general on behalf of this.
And I'm clear whether that would make a difference.
Counselor Gilmore?
Yeah, so it does make a difference because we need an instrument, and it sounds to me like someone is gonna have to draft a resolution. And if other people want to word that now, I personally don't like wordsmithing on the fly. I would want to write it down and then look at it. So if somebody wants to write a resolution, based on the conversation that we've been having this evening, and then forward that to committee chairs, forward that to, the clerk's office so that it can go to committee chairs. And then from committee chairs, we wouldn't send it back to subcommittee because it came from here, but that would be the, kind of the path forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, because as you know from the past, somebody has to be in charge of this. One counselor has to say that this is theirs. They own it and they're putting it forward.
Right. And it
So
should
they
be a
have to
written
write
document.
it.
Right. It should be a written document so that if someone
Okay.
sees a specific word that they take issue with, then there are opportunities for amendments and we're all on the same page in a more literal sense.
Right, and I'm still also at the point that before it even goes to full council, that Mr. Burrell has been invited. Whether we, he comes and we still put it forward, that's fine. But I just want to do things properly. But I'm not adopting this. I'm not writing this resolution. So whatever counselor is owning this and writing it and moving it forward, then that's fine.
I will write it. With regard to your comment, Counselor Ricketts, I don't specifically object to Burrell being present, but in my opinion, we're dealing with a criminal, and criminals, yeah, they get their say in court, but we don't have to feel sorry for them.
Point of order?
Yes.
Okay, we're elected, so let's watch the language and the things that we say. Okay?
Excuse me, Counselor Ricketts, I don't.
I'm just saying, people who pay taxes, things like that, we got to put our personal aside and.
This is not personal, and by the way, he only pays taxes when threatened with tax taking.
All right, let's
So
move
point
on.
of
I'm not gonna fight
order.
with-
Hold on a second.
I'm not going to fight with
President-
council.
President Gilmore?
I just wanted to make a point of order. City councilors should not be naming names, especially if we're starting to talk about legal proceedings and the person has not actually been in front of a judge yet. We have to be very careful about what we say. So if a counselor wants to draft a resolution and send that to committee chairs, it's too late the agenda's already been set for March. It'll go up to the April committee chairs meeting. And then at that point, we can look at the nature of the resolution and decide how we're going to move forward.
I did want to point out too, that when we're talking about this, we are talking about the public records documents of the past.
Right.
So, this gentleman has been accused of violating restraining orders, witness intimidation. It goes on and on and on. So,
I agree. I
so I'm
agree
not
with you. We can
saying
discuss the public records.
Counselor Lapiensky is wrong in what he's saying. But you're right. We do have to be careful as elected officials. But
Right, I
I
think
do
we
want to
can-
ask
Yeah, I just feel like it's a fine line. So we can talk about public records, but if a person has not had their day in court yet, it doesn't, I feel like that's where we're crossing the line. We have to let the
Yes.
person have their day in court.
In what way has he not been in court about these issues?
In the sense that we're taking up, if we're gonna go to the Attorney General's office and lodge a complaint, we can't call them names. We have to just mind our P's and Q's.
No, we just have to be mature.
That's the third time in the last 5 minutes that you've insulted Councilor Ricketts.
You're an elected official, sir. We are all
So
elected
are
officials,
you.
okay?
Let's try to hopefully keep
Don't
on
shush me.
subject here. Let's try to keep on subject, because this is an important issue, because I believe too that if we do nothing, people are harmed. That's the basic thing here. So it's very important that we address this issue because it involves multiple departments. It has involved multiple mayors. And I agree that in a perfect world, this would have been handled by the mayor's office. But I don't know why. We've already gotten the opinion that it's not going to be handled by this mayor's office. So that's why we have to deal with it here at CRE. It's an important community issue. I think there could be a benefit from talking with the mayor's office because we need to figure out why all these departments have multiple violations over many years, yet there's no coordination. And I only see that coordination being able to happen from the mayor's office on a city level. I don't know what that looks like. Most of these departments are understaffed, underfunded, which doesn't help. I don't know if this would go through a detective in the police department, but I think it's time that we need to identify when there are very problem actors in town. And especially when there's long histories of violation, this is harmful to people. And it's not the kind of behavior that we should be tolerating in Greenfield at all. So I think we need to be direct as city councilors and speak to these issues directly and not be too overcautious because these affect people's lives. But I would like to ask the council if, in general, I want to get a sense that everyone does support that we could go forward to the Attorney General with this. And Councilor Toronzo, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that it is important that we tackle this in whatever way we can, not only because of, the length and the brevity of these complaints. And as you were saying that interdepartmentally, maybe it hasn't been working as well as it should have. And in trying to not stay with the past, but going forward is also, if there is a reason locally that I'm not making implications, but if there were to have been reasons within our locality, like that people were hesitant to push against this individual in this case, but in any case, so that there wouldn't be any fair treatment for certain citizens over others, to kind of even just to rule that out one more step, if this was going to somebody like the Attorney General to review, then it would be somebody outside of our committee looking at it with fresh eyes, and there would be no, accusations of possible, nefarious dealings or, favoritism towards a person in the community that perhaps could have been the reason that there wasn't as much consequence throughout this time. I mean, we don't know, and I'm not accusing that of being the way that it is, but I think it does just take that one extra step for doing our due diligence for the citizens who have made these complaints, even if they weren't directly to us. They are well documented to the appropriate boards that could have seen, or the departments that could have did deal with it, but maybe could have dealt with it in a different way or had a better communication. So I think that there's how we can get this to that next step, so another set of eyes is looking at it. I think it'd be appropriate.
Mr. Leyva, did you want to respond? I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I just, without going into too much detail about it, I wanted to offer another example of basically, with regard to like the building department, they have a, and this was talked about at the November City Council meeting of last year. the building department has a requirement to inspect all multifamily units, the common areas of all multifamily units every 5 years, and it's a state mandate. And unfortunately, because of staffing issues at the building department, it's something that they haven't been able to do. There's many expired certificates for these multifamily inspections, and it's something that where because of the limited staffing at the building department, they have to try to get as much work done as they can, and so they have been conducting these inspections on land for the landlords that respond to the recertification application, but not for those who don't. That alone has some pretty serious implications about how the city deals with landlords who are unresponsive. And again, this isn't the fault of the building department, obviously. I mean, if we're not providing if we're not providing funding to our city and, staffing for our city departments, we're going to get results. But when this came up during the appointments and ordinance meeting, I think it was a couple of years ago, it was something of a surprise to counselors, and it seemed to be a surprise to the mayor as well. And again, this is like with the fire department issue that Councillor Ricketts had suggested I bring to the safety commission meeting. This is about communication. And again, I think many counselors and many department heads have a broad awareness of the landlord that I'm speaking of, as well as a number of other landlords. But I think there has been no real review, and it's because they simply don't have time or resources. I had learned about Burrell's physical altercation history with tenants because Councillor Ricketts was knowledgeable about this from her time in the city. And as a result of that, I decided to pull a public records request for the police records concerning these properties, which not only showed that which Councillor Ricketts had told me, but much more. And it became very evident that this was a very long pattern of behavior, of both belligerence and negligence, and of animosity.
Okay.
And again, like I want to make it very clear, I'm not suggesting that we take every single landlord who has a violation, to a complaint with the Attorney General's office. In fact, I'm not even suggesting we do it for any other landlords. I think that at some point in the future there needs to be a real public discussion again around the idea of how, these housing issues can be improved for tenants. And I know that there's public monies that are available, right now through at the county level. And I know that there's some other people that are working on that. But, and I know that, I know that these departments are internally looking at figuring out how they can do things differently. Some people are new to this and they're, looking at, they're looking at different things that they can do than previous. But again, I am talking about one landlord, and I'm talking about a very obvious set of a I'm talking about a very long violation history where there are.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would just like to make a comment on that. A lot of what we're talking about is repeat offenders, and there's no action. There is action taking because there's obviously lots of documentation, but there's no meaningful result to any of this documentation. And that's where there's a problem. I don't know how we get there as a city, but that's something that's going to have to be addressed at some point, because it just doesn't make sense to continue that we create these ordinances and laws for a reason, not to just keep repeating over and over and over and over that you could burn trash every single day at your house, or 10 or 12 times, or even be taken to court and keep doing that. It's a terrible use of city resources in our departments. When you look at this documentation and the amount of time our departments have spent in this case on one person is stunning. I can't even imagine the dollar amount if you were to add that up. So that's just a side comment. Are there any more? Counselor Ricketts?
Yep, this will be my last point, I hope. Back to Councilor Toronzo's point and some of Councilor Bottomley from what he just said. I know that we have a counselor who's going to own this resolution and write it. And because, the goal is to send it to the to the Attorney General's office and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, President Gilmore, but most likely this document will have to be sent to legal anyway before we do anything, because this is something really fairly new, and we're going to want to make sure that it's written in a way that is correct for council, and it's something we should be and can be doing.
I think if we're talking about a resolution, I don't think those normally go to legal. If the
You don't want
resolution
this one
is,
too?
I'm sorry?
You don't want this one too? That's going to go to an attorney general?
I think I would want to see what it says before.
Okay.
I mean, if it's something very general that just says, so and so is going to pick up the phone and make a phone call, if it goes into lots and lots of detail, then yeah, that should
Right.
definitely go to legal. So let's see what the final
Right.
product looks like.
Okay. And I wanted to tie in, I can't believe I was going to say Dr. Bottomley. I don't know where that came from. Counselor Bottomley is, I don't know if it'll be part of the resolution, but maybe something about when different departments are called about things, how it's documented and how much time is given, and, are fines definitely given out, and after a certain amount of fines, then what happens? Because maybe at some point, somebody ends up losing their license to be able to be a property owner or something if everything is so far out of whack this much. But let's see what's written and we'll go from there.
Counselor Gilmore? Sorry,
I'm a
President
little
Gilmore.
nervous about putting the documentation onto the departments. I mean, obviously they have to keep records, but it seems to me like the situation that was kind of outlined for us was not. I'm sorry. Hold on, let me. Okay, I'm gonna try and talk over it. So it seems to me like, if the firefighter's job is to go and tell the property owner, hey, you can't be burning trash on your front lawn. I don't feel like I don't think it's fair that the firefighter would go back and research and see, oh, has this property owner done this before? Because I know it's not the same people that are on shift. And I think if it's not the same address, right, then there's no opportunity to pick up that pattern. And I think not picking up that pattern obviously has been a problem, but I don't feel like it's fair to put that on, our health department or our fire department. I just don't think that they're staffed to keep those sorts of records. And I think that we would be sort of overstepping our bounds as city councilors to, like, we don't get to add to their job descriptions, So, but I think that in this case, because there's so much documentation, we'll see what the resolution looks like and we'll take it up and, move things forward the best way that we possibly could. But, if we're done with the topic, I do see that someone wanted to comment on this particular one before we move on to the rest of our agenda.
I saw Glenn Ayers I don't know if he's still on. I don't see him, so I think,
Oh, no, there he is.
oh, Mr. Ayers, are you on? Would you like to speak?
I'm back. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Thank you for taking a comment. I just want to say that normally I think that this issue would be dealt with by the Board of Health and the Health Department. But as you know, in the recent history of Greenfield, there was a long time period when we had no board, no health department at all. Everyone had quit. So I can understand where there would be a problem with enforcement going back, well, starting in 2017 probably, and after that. But this is something that should be handled by the Board of Health under the minimum standards for human habitation, 105 CMR 410. Those are the regulations. Those are the base regulations that are used for all of these housing issues. And I enforced that code for 20 years, and I would often call up the Department of Public Health Community Sanitation Program and get one of the housing specialists to come out and give me assistance with very difficult cases. Now, the person that I dealt with, Paul Halfman, who is the director of that program, he's just retired recently, but there must be someone else who has replaced him in the community sanitation program that is a housing specialist. And Department of Public Health at the state level, but they often came out to help the local boards of health. Now, there is also a program at the Attorney General's office in Springfield. It was the Abandoned and Distressed Properties Program that I worked very closely with on numerous cases, and they were extremely helpful, especially if you were thinking about going into receivership or something like that. And I know that our city is currently working with that office, and there's already that connection that exists, again, through the health department and the health director and the Board of Health. So that seems that that would be the best approach to take. I'm not saying that the city council shouldn't do this, but it seems like there's already a mechanism in place where that should have already happened, because this is, which is clear from tonight, this is an evidence-based process. And the evidence is all of these repeat offenses, the documentation. This is the kind of case that you would easily take to the Attorney General, because you already have a huge stack of evidence that forms the basis for the action. And the AG would look at that and immediately determine that this is a pattern and practice of violating the state laws. And so my suggestion would be that the city council, if the health department and Board of Health is unable or unwilling to do this, then the city council should proceed to reach out to the Attorney General. I don't know why the Board of Health department has not done that, or maybe they have, but that would be something that I would ask. First is, have they already initiated this proceeding with the Attorney General's office? Because it should, obviously, it's clear that this should have happened a long time ago based on the record, based on the evidence that exists. And the law is very enforceable, but it requires people to actually enforce it. And that's maybe where some help could come from the community sanitation program at the Department of Public Health. And the programs worked very closely together. DPH works very closely with the Attorney General's office, the Assistant Attorney General in Springfield, and the boards of health and health departments also work very closely. It's a very close collaborative process. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this resolution. I think that might actually provide some political pressure on our own city to do what appears to not have been done. But again, I don't know all the details, so I don't know if maybe this is currently already being done by our health department in Greenfield. But if not, then it needs to be done. This process needs to be initiated. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. So it sounds like we're going to go forward. This resolution, the timing of it is, since the chair's meeting is tomorrow, I don't know if we would have the resolution in time to get this on next month. So this is going to be a little ways in advance when this resolution comes. It's coming back to CRE. Is that what we've agreed on?
So it would have to go to chairs first, but there's the 5-day rule. So we've already missed the 5 days. Even if we drafted something tonight, we can't get it onto the agenda for tomorrow. So the earliest we would be looking at it is March, and then depending upon how it's characterized, the chairs will all decide, and you get to help
Okay.
make that decision as a new chair. So we're all gonna decide whether it goes back to committee or full council or what what its fate would be.
Excellent. So I just want to make sure everybody's had their say in this, or if counselors express their opinions on this issue, can we move on? Great. The next thing is noise complaints, and I do want to say I have not had a chance to review the original ordinance that was proposed a while back on this. So it's up to you if you want to, if we want to open this discussion tonight, or I'll throw this out to the committee, because there were a lot of documents concerning Burrell and Mr. Leva's request. What does the committee think?
For the noise complaint, for the noise piece of this?
Yes,
Do we
yeah.
have a particular piece that we're focusing on? Or are we just talking about it in general?
I think we can talk, oh, Councilor Gilmore?
So I got an email from somebody who asked if this could be put on the chair's agenda to talk about how we deal with noise in the community. And I don't have any documentation. We weren't talking about necessarily an ordinance. That's something that came up a few years ago. So I think that's kind of like where everybody immediately started focusing. But it was just something that was brought up as a, sort of community relations topic because it's just quality of life.
But
I mean,
we have no point of focus. We don't have like,
it was supposed to just be a discussion. So I'm not, I mean, I don't see anyone here that asked to discuss it. So
no,
I don't know if we table it for now or.
yeah, I don't know who asked you to put it out. And so if they don't have a particular complaint or something, we do have a noise ordinance. Unless there's a reason that's not working and we need to take another look at it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where somebody was going with this. And so unless it's something specific, I'm not going to talk about the noise ordinance just to talk about it. I've been on council for like 6 years. This has come up numerous times, hence the ordinance. So.
Right. And honestly, if it was an ordinance, it would go to A&O. It wouldn't really come to CRE. It was just kind of like supposed to be discussing something that a tenant had brought forward, not a tenant, I'm sorry, a resident had brought forward, but.
About their area or just the city in general or something they want to see?
I've heard from a couple different people who live in different neighborhoods. So I don't know. I don't feel like we have anything to ground this in right now. Unless we want to talk about an ordinance, but that would get kicked off to A&O anyways.
I make a motion to table.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I believe that concludes our discussion. Is there other business? Oh, Councilor Lapinski.
Yeah, so I was reviewing today the mandate for this committee, and we are in violation of that mandate, so I would like to discuss it. Specifically, the mandate says, Community Relations and Education Committee will provide a regular venue during meetings for communications with the school department on cultural and social aspects within the schools. And then it says, Community Relations and Education Committee shall promote ongoing communication between residents and city government, encourage resident participation in city meetings, and provide forums, both in person and electronic, for interaction between council members and the public. We're not doing that.
What part?
The part where it says, provide forums, both in person and electronic, for interaction between council members and the public. So I would like to move that this committee meet in person henceforth, regardless of what the rest of the council does.
The president here can address this, but I believe that is coming up in chairs and needs
It
to be
is.
voted on by the full council.
Yeah, we're voting on that tomorrow well, I mean, we're taking it up at chairs tomorrow.
I'd like to be more specific then. I am proposing that this committee make its own decision for this committee, specifically because this committee is in violation of its stated mandate. And this mandate was updated January 12th, 2022.
Point of order, but
Yes.
doesn't it say in person or electronic?
No, it says both in person and electronic. It says both and it says and.
Okay, well, we are in electronic right now.
Okay, but we're not providing both forums as required by this committee's mandate. Have you read the mandate for this committee?
Yeah, but you just heard that it's a discussion for tomorrow night.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is that this committee discuss it for this committee. The discussion tomorrow night is for full council.
I believe that the governor's orders allow us to meet remotely and that we fall under that, which is what the council has adopted to this point. Now, what I don't know is, I believe this is other business, so you can make a motion and it could be seconded and we could vote on it. Am I wrong?
Nope, nope, he made a motion.
Okay. Is there a second? So I don't hear a second, so that we would not then consider that motion tonight.
Yeah, I think tomorrow we're going to establish consistency, because if all of the subcommittees are going to meet the same way and residents have an expectation, I think that's important too.
Right, but again, this committee is explicitly in violation of its mandate as updated about 6 weeks ago, and I don't know whether that means that a citizen could take legal action against us, but we really should be thinking about what we're doing and not just doing it because we don't feel like showing up. And I understand that there's going to be a discussion for the full council, but this committee is this committee. And I don't know that the full council has a specific mandate like this that specifies we must meet in person, but this committee does. And this committee is in violation of its own mandate.
So if someone from the town wanted to take legal action against the city council, they're welcome to do that. I think given the order from the governor right now, I don't think that they would stand a chance.
Right, and the other point is we have so many participants on right now. I think that is because we are remote. I can't say 100% that if we were in person right now in City Hall, because that's where we have this meeting, is in City Hall, everyone would still come right now.
The issue that I raised is not whether everyone who has a simulation of themselves on this screen would show up in City Hall. The issue I raised was that this committee is under a mandate and we are choosing not to follow it because it seems like we don't feel like it. Moreover, the people that are on this simulated meeting are simply observing, and they could do that if we were in City Hall from home.
So point of order,
Right.
when a counselor makes a motion and doesn't receive a second, it means that we stop discussion.
That's right.
So this is going to be discussed tomorrow at committee chairs, and
And it's only for the
it's going to
folks
be
that are chairs.
right.
So it's not all the counselors can come and speak out. You have to be a chair to speak tomorrow night.
And again, I
Right,
want
and
to mention
also-
that, yeah, this will come before the council and we'll all have a chance to weigh in it. So I just want to say, Councilor Lapinski, I value your opinions and you're going to get a chance to address this in the full city council meeting when we take up this issue.
Mhm.
And another point I want to make for all counselors, because this gets to be confusing, but if you're going to bring something up under new business, it has to be, if you're not going to meet the 5-day requirement, it has to be something that could not have been anticipated. If there was, an earthquake this morning and we wanted to talk about that, that would be different. But if it's something that we knew about 5 days ago, it needs to go through the channel and be added to the agenda.
Correct.
Because then the public has a right to come in. If they see that it's on the agenda and they want to say something, they're supposed to get that opportunity. So we don't want to use new business to go on tangents. We use new business if it's something we could not have anticipated, but absolutely must take up.
Right, because we just took the public out of this conversation because we didn't speak about it earlier in the meeting. So they didn't have a chance to speak and give their thoughts about this because they didn't know it was on the agenda.
Thank you, counselors. I think we had a robust discussion tonight, and I encourage all of you to reach out to me and community members to reach out to CRE to discuss what's important to you as we go forward, because we have a pretty broad calling here to discuss issues that are important to quality of life issues here in Greenfield. So our next meeting will be March 21st at 6 p.m. In City Hall or via WebEx, depending on what happens at our meetings. So I guess I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Ricketts.
Second, Gilmore.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a great night.